Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another PCA Region Focus hosted webinar. My name is Laura Dant and I am the PCA Region Focus Coordinator. This evening's presentation of EV myth busting for region leadership will be presented by David Bankston, PCA EV Technical Coordinator. Also joining us this evening is National Secretary Stan Thorne. Before we get started, I have a few things I would like to cover. I would like to welcome any zone reps or other national staff representatives that are on the call with us this evening. This webinar is being recorded for future use for those who cannot attend and will be uploaded to the PCA website under Region Focus, where it can be downloaded in the future along with this presentation. As a bit of housekeeping for the webinar, everyone will be muted as this helps to eliminate disruptive background noise. I would also like to draw your attention to the Ask Question feature located towards the bottom right of your screen. If during this presentation you have a question, you can submit it there. We'll be reviewing submissions during the webinar and if possible, address them on the call. Otherwise, we will follow up with you later with a resolution. So without further delay, David, if you're ready, I'll hand control over to you.
Absolutely. All right, let's see here. Hello, everyone. Can you see my screen good? All right. So my name is David Bankston. It's a new position. I am the National EV Coordinator. Just a little bit about me. I'm a technologist, CTO many years, but basically, I just want to say that I absolutely am I have dual, masters, as we call it. So I own a 2024 GT3, and the sound of that car at 9,000 RPM is just absolute heaven. So I just want everyone to know I'm not simply about EVs. I do love my gas car, but I also own a 2024 Macan 4, and my wife does, and a Taycan GTS. So I really enjoy the Porsche product, and I just wanted to get that out of the way. And I'm not trying to sell EVs today. I'm really just trying to help region leaders understand some of the questions that I get on a regular basis, and maybe give you kind of some ammunition, some answers that you can, kind of have at the ready. So here's just a quick overview of some of the topics we're going to touch on: safety, repair costs, charging, range anxiety, tires, resale, EV batteries, recycling, and EVs on track. And I think we'll just do Q&A afterwards, offline. Okay, so just really quick, the first question that I get often is, are EVs safe? We've all seen the videos of the EV that bursts into flame, and we've heard the stories of people having difficulty with EV fires, and it just seems like it's a big problem with EVs. But if you step back and you really zoom out and you look at the propensity of an EV fire, it is extremely, extremely low. So in this case, there's many stats out there, but this is out of 600,000 cars. The incident rate was 0.004. And compare that to an ICE rate car, which is 0.08. And then, as you can see, so essentially you're 61 more times likely to have an ICE fire. Now, you could argue the ICE fires aren't as big and aren't as hard to put out, but still, this just understanding that it isn't really this sort of rampant thing where EVs are bursting in flames, and that's just a misconception that's out there. The other strange fact here, though, is that hybrid vehicles are actually the most, difficult with respect to fires, because you have both a battery and a gas engine in the same vehicle, and the complexity of that inner workings of the two propulsion systems is what adds, to the possibility of fire. So, but even then, hybrid vehicles are still, of course, very safe in retrospect. Okay, so next up, just a little bit about how Porsche and other cars, but specifically Porsche, is working to make sure that your EV is safe. They are working at many levels, and one of them including AI. You probably didn't know, but in all the new Macans, and it's being rolled into all the Taycans, there's new software that actually is monitoring the battery for health and can detect battery faults before they happen, and then notify you to either go to the dealer or do some different action. So imagine your car is actually it looks at itself and can diagnose the problem before it happens. And you can see that really becomes proactive with respect to maintenance and battery longevity, or early alerts to the owner when anomalies detected, it really tells you, hey, there's something going on. We see a little weirdness in the battery. You might want to take it in. And it'll even flag it at the Porsche dealer automatically. So there's a lot going on with new technology to make sure that these cars are safe. And you can see other manufacturers are also trying and adding these sort of diagnostics in their product. But Porsche is doing actually a very good job of it. They just do it very quietly, and haven't quite, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that. So safety, we check that box. Now let's talk a little bit about are Porsche's EVs expensive? I'm sure we've all heard the story of, oh, this person's battery blew up and it's $35,000 to repair the battery, and oh my goodness, it's out of control. Those stories are also, again, very rare, because the battery warranty for EVs is absolutely the best warranty you can get on just about any kind of car out there. It's 8 years or 80,000 miles. 8 years. So when has a car been warranted for 8 years? And the battery contains all the propulsion mechanisms, except for the motors. And the motors just don't go bad. They're just electric winded motors. So essentially, this is your engine. So think of an ICE car with an 8-year engine warranty. That's basically what you're getting here. And this battery warranty is very healthy. So here's something that is very interesting. Let me see if I can get this. Yes, I can. So what happens here, so this is a typical battery life cycle. So we're talking about essentially, are EVs expensive? That's the question you may get. So your battery warranty, we've said, is 8 years. So say in a couple of years, something happens and your battery, you get a couple of bad battery cells in it. Well, guess what? Those get replaced, generally with new ones or like new ones. And so you're off and running, and off you go again. Then maybe in year 4, you get a couple more battery cells and they replace 6 cells. Maybe you get more this time. Okay, then off you go. Happy driving. And by the way, I'm now getting battery cells replaced within 24 to 48 hours. So this is not something that takes months and months anymore. They really are figuring out how to do this. So then cell errors. So maybe year 6, you have a really big problem. You got another 6 cells that are bad. So all this time you're owning this car, Porsche is still replacing these battery cells as you're driving through your life cycle. And arguably, at the end of the warranty of 8 years, you now have 23 of 33 modules that are basically new. That can happen. That is basically an extension of this car could run, for hundreds of thousands of miles. So this is something that you can just throw out there. It's something to consider. This, arguably, this is could be a not your everyday scenario, but this is kind of a worst case scenario. This battery has a very strong warranty. So let's check the box on sort of battery warranty. Now, EV charging is slow. Okay, well, many people don't want to change their life. I don't want to have to wait on a charger. I don't want to have to slow down. It adds another X hours to my trip. So I really don't want to do it. So I hear this question often. Why, what's going on with charging? How long does it take to charge? That is the number one question that I get, that I am trying to help everybody else with. So the thing is, it's slow, but not with a Porsche most of the time. And the reason is that Porsche was the first company to release an 800-volt charging system. The 800-volt charging system basically allows you to expend or basically push more power into the battery in the same amount of time. So faster charging, higher continuous power, less weight, and less volume. So if you look at these two cables, a 400-volt cable is twice as thick as an 800-volt cable. So you wouldn't think that's the case, but it is, and it has to do with resistance and essentially Ohm's law and a bunch of technical stuff, which we don't have to go into. But essentially, if you look at what they've done, is they've kind of future-proofed this car. So today, most Teslas and most other manufacturers are using a 400-volt technology. they're getting, Teslas used to be at about 150 kilowatts. Now they're up to about 200 to 250 kilowatts on a Tesla. That's pretty well max that you'll ever see in a 400-volt car. The 800-volt cars, Porsche started out at 260, 270, and some of the Macans now are really cranking up there because that was the bottom end. So essentially, in the future, these cars, because of the kilowatt capability, could charge at 400 kilowatts, and which is amazing. So what was 20 minutes is now 10 minutes. So that's the future. And then, we're not going to go through it, but here's kind of some math. One more screen here. Some math. There's some math that makes all this stuff work with kilowatts. And if you want to have some fun, you can play around with Ohm's law. And we're not going to go through that right now. But anyway, there's a reason that it charges so much faster. Okay, now next topic is where can I charge when I need to charge? Okay, a lot of what questions I get are, okay, it's very difficult to find chargers. Okay, well, we're gonna talk through that because that has been the case. It has been very difficult to find chargers. Sometimes the chargers are broken. Sometimes the chargers say they're up and they're not up. Sometimes the chargers are not even there on the map when you show up. And so absolutely, this is a problem that is being addressed. And it is, there are a lot of people working on it. However, this is something that, you can't really sugarcoat. It is truly an issue that needs to get better. The good news is that it is getting better. And so across the industry, there are now new chargers going in a pretty fast pace, and the pace is accelerating. Okay, so essentially, and if you look down here in the bottom, you'll see this says level 2 and DC fast. So essentially, if you look at this line here, the dark spot are the really super fast ones. The light blue here are the ones that are level 2, which are essentially kind of the ones you see at a lot of hotel parking lots and so forth. But this is also a very important part of the infrastructure because you can charge while you're overnight at a hotel. You can, that is like one of the biggest things people are doing now. And most hotels don't charge you. You just plug it in and off you go. And the more of these that show up, the more of these you then have access to. And keep in mind, these are all, generally, I was going to say free, but they're also very compatible with your Porsche car. So essentially, you plug it in and you walk away, and off you go. So clearly, the infrastructure needs to grow, but it is on pace to accelerate its growth. Okay, helpful. Now, the big sort of elephant in the room here is, what about Tesla chargers? The plan still is that Tesla chargers are to be available to Porsche cars before the end of 2025. They've had some delays. There's been a lot of restructuring at Tesla. So the goal is still by the end of 2025, you'll be able to roll up to any charger anywhere. That's important to say. Any charger anywhere. Tesla, non-Tesla, a bunch of other networks, and we'll cover some of those networks here in a bit. And so, yes, you will need an adapter. And on the next slide, we'll look at that quickly. So actually, we'll just do that. So you will need a bit of an adapter to charge at a Tesla. And so just really quickly, there's multiple kinds of charging, right? We talked about sort of the 400 volt and the 800 volt and so forth. So looking at, how this charging sort of works for members and owners, essentially at home, you can plug it in your 120 volt socket, which your lamp is plugged into, and you will get a very, very slow charge. It may take you 2 days to charge your car. That is not recommended behavior. However, if you're in a hurry and that's all you've got, it can get you maybe juiced up to get somewhere else to get a bigger charge. Next up is your 240 volt plug. That 240 volt plug is just like your washer and your dryer, mainly your dryer. Your dryer is a 240 volt, essentially it's two 120 volts wired together. That can get you 9.6 kilowatts. That can charge your car within probably 6-7 hours. And that's it. That's all you need. So you plug it in at night, you wake up in the morning, it's all good. And these are what they call level 2. So when we talk about level 2 chargers. Okay, next up is your Tesla system, which is coming online. And the Tesla we talked about is 400 volts, right? Well, 400 volts. So this is interesting, and this is important to know. On a Taycan, you will most likely get 50 kilowatt charging time, which is a kind of slow, especially when the car can do 250. So 50 kilowatts is slow because what's happening is the car has to convert the 800 volt or convert the 400 volt system into the 800 volts it needs in order to feed the battery. And the onboard systems don't, they're not really designed to do that in a quick, in a effective way. They're sufficient, but you generally will get 50 kilowatts. There was an adapter on some of them that would get you 150 kilowatts. There was an extension that they used to sell. But conversely, then on the new Macans, you can probably get about 120 kilowatts. So this will charge, pretty quick, 120 kilowatts, probably a 20-minute charge session, 25-minute charge session, maybe 30 minutes, from like 10% to 80%. Then, of course, you've got the big dogs here, the 800 volt. This is either Electrify America, Florida Power and Light, EV Go. There's a lot of networks we can cover. These all are running at really high power voltage. This is the future of charging. This is 270 kilowatts or more. And this is where everyone eventually, other than Tesla, we'll see what they do, are headed. So clearly charging is just going to get better and better, okay? All right, now we're going to talk about how do you charge. So there's a couple of ways to go about charging. One's called the Porsche Charging Planner, and the other one they just rolled out is called Apple EV Maps Routing. Okay, so what they're doing, so essentially now Apple Maps can work with the Porsche system to help you find your way. Couldn't be any easier. Actually, we're not even going to cover that one because it's so easy. We're going to cover the Porsche Charging Planner, which is a little more expansive. So in the Porsche Charging Planner, essentially you open up your app, you get some things that you won't see unless you're in an EV car, and then you essentially put in your map, you put in your map, and you say, find my route. So the car is incredibly smart. It knows where to charge. It will make the route, create the charging stops, tell you how long each charging stop it is, and then ask you how long you want or how much charge you want to have at the end of your destination. So I only want to have 10% at the end of my destination, so that means I only have to charge once for 6 minutes here, and off I go. And it'll tell you even with traffic delay, 6-minute charging time, and then send route to vehicle. You hit that button, you send the route to the vehicle, off you go. That's as simple as it is to figure out how to charge so you don't run out of electricity, okay? This is just really quick because it shows the bubble range. This is essentially when you're sitting in an EV, in a Porsche, this bubble, this outline here, is how far you can go based on the current charge that you have and where you're headed. So it gives you all you need, the distance to the next stop, total bubble range. So right now I could drive from here all the way up to there until I start getting a little nervous. So if you kind of look at it from this standpoint, it's a very easy visual way to say that, hey, I can make it to my next charger. So my next charger is here in Jacksonville. Here I am. I should be able to make it. And it's telling you, yep, you can make it, and here you go. So again, we're trying to make, to figure out how to get rid of the range anxiety and help people understand. So this is what Porsche is doing. Hopefully, region leaders can help people sort of get a little more comfortable with this whole charging situation. So now let's go on and look at driving tours. Okay, so for driving tours, yes, you can drive 200 miles And yes, and I am here if there's any way I can be helpful, send me an email. I'll give my contact information at the end. Because what we do with driving tours is that we now can easily add chargers to the tour. So if you say, you know what, here's my tour, I've mapped it out in Google Maps, essentially, you can actually just go into Google Maps and say add charging stations. And again, as I was saying, that most of these charging stations all work now. So you see up at the top, there's Electrify America. Down here, there's ChargePoint, these big orange ones, and you can see that they're high power chargers. So for Parade 2025, I worked with Holly, the tour chair, and we made sure that everyone on the tour had, if they needed, had a charging map. And so there were plenty of charging maps, and then we gave full deck directions. It's easy to add the charging stops to the tour. And so, arguably you could wrap that around, the actual stops so that everyone sort of stays together, but that may or may not always work out if you're in the middle of kind of some very, sort of vast areas, but, it's not that difficult to add charging to the tours. The other thing is the Department of Energy has a alternative fueling station locator. So if you just are absolutely confused or whatever, you can always kind of go to this site and it will tell you where the charging stations are. And so there's many ways to figure out how to help members get get to where they need to be to participate in Porsche, and in PCA events. Okay, so there shouldn't be, well, we can't do this because they're using an EV. If that's the case, certainly reach out to me and maybe I can help with that. Okay, there's a lot of networks. We've talked a little bit about that because the networks of whose charger is what, right? So this is where what I'm going to tell you is you really don't have to worry about this as much because all these networks are all using the same jack, the same power plug right now. And eventually, they may switch to the Tesla power plug, but even then you'll have an adapter and then you'll just be able to plug in. Electricity is electricity. It's really just who's going to pay the bill. And clearly Electrify America is the one that you get 3 free years of EV charging with every new EV. And then the other networks are, there's many out there. I just listed a few. But my point here is when people ask you, hey, there's no Electrify America in my area, what do I do? Or, hey, I'm going to go on a trip, but I don't see what I need to see with respect to charging. If one of those other 2 things we just talked about, which was the Porsche Charge Planner, maybe they don't know how to use it, or the site, they don't know how to use it, we can help them figure out how to get there. And interestingly, several big networks are coming online, like Costco is really going heavy. So pretty soon they'll be coming on strong. 7-Eleven is coming on strong. And then, as we mentioned, Tesla in the 4th quarter of 2025. Okay, so charging, let's check that box. Okay, tires. I get a lot of questions about tires. Okay, so tires, do you need special EV tires? The answer is yes, and there's a reason for it. And essentially, the EVs, as you know, are generally very heavy. 2 tons, they're as heavy as, like a big SUV. Even though the battery is very low, gives you low center of gravity, so that's awesome for handling and such, but the car itself is very heavy. So because of that, you really want to make sure your EV is running on EV-related, essentially, I won't say certified, but branded tires. And what they've done in a lot of EV tires is they put special quiet foam in there, because another thing is the EV is so quiet, you don't want tire hum, you don't want tire howl, you don't want bangity bang. You want the car to be quiet. So they've enhanced the quiet. They've optimized it for regenerative braking. And the big thing, a lot of it is low rolling resistance. So, if you've got some chunky tire with a bunch of knobs on it, it's just going to bounce around and it's going to kill your range. So these are just things that are very helpful with respect to EV tires. Okay, now I'm just going to tell you a little tire story. So there's some top EV rated tires. There's a lot of brands out there. Everybody's coming out with EV tires. The Goodyear is actually a pretty good tire. It's called Electric Drive. Continental's got one. Kook, not a bad tire. But then what I really want you to see is kind of this tire story that I can, firsthand tell you. So you may not have heard of this thing. This thing is called a bridge approach slab. So I know you felt it, but you're driving along, right? You're driving along the pavement, and next thing you know, you hit this bang as you approach the bridge. Whatever, say the bridge is concrete. So in this situation, they have essentially, pulled the top surface off the tar, and then yet they haven't come back and put the ramp back in. So then you're rolling along, and then bang, your car hits that bridge deck, which is concrete, because they're not going to resurface that. They're only resurfacing the pavement. And that happened to me in a big, big way. And I just knew the tire was going to blow. And this is the reason why you get an EV tire, because my tire did not blow. It was nothing wrong whatsoever. It worked like a charm. And I was using a Pirelli P0, what they call Elect. So that Elect tire was designed to handle that type of impact with no issue whatsoever. Does it cost more? A little, but I'm just saying that, if a member asks you, hey, do I need to pay more for the Elect tires? The answer is yes, we recommend it. I recommend it. Okay, so tires, let's move on. Resale. Okay, we've all heard these stories. Resale's terrible, right? So let's take a look at resale. So resale is really the best car to compare it to would be a Panamera. And if you look at the two, just, they're both very similar cars, very similar chassis, very similar sort of resale world out there. And you can see clearly there are factors that would affect resale on both sides. On the left side, you've got maintenance of the ICE powertrain over time. So typically maintenance on a ICE engine goes up over time. And then on the other side, of course, you've got battery degradation, which people are worried about, which I would argue you don't really need to worry about because you've got a very strong warranty. We covered that earlier. And then, the technical advancements say, well, I guess what, your battery will be obsolete in 3 years and so forth and so on. But again, we've covered that again with the warranty. So all that being said, if you kind of look at the stats really say that it's not that far off as you would think. Yes, it's lower, but if you look at year ownership 1, that's when the hit hits, pretty hard. So, most cars in that first year take a big hit. Second year, bang, another big hit. Third year, it's starting to ease up a little bit. Third year, it's easing up a little bit. Fifth year, it's easing up a lot. And arguably, in 7+ years, it has switched sides. So, assuming that all is well with the battery, then at that point, it's predicted now that this car will retain more because at that point your engine is probably going to need new seals and new valves and new this and that and so forth because of all the mechanical parts that have worn out in that ICE engine. So it's an interesting sort of a misconception that EVs are just really horrible resale. It is a hit, but it is a very much not that different than what you see with the Panamera, which would be the comparator. Okay, now let's look at green. So if I hear this one more time, I don't know what I'll say, but everyone, I hear all the time, guess where the power comes from, right? So agreed. Yes, the power comes from the grid. So let's take a look at that because this is kind of a fun chart. Because if you look at the life cycle of greenhouse gas emissions, guess what? Well, gasoline is pretty darn up on the top left, right? That's the big one, followed by diesel, biofuels. Clearly, a lot of trucks on the road. Then natural gas. We used to think natural gas was pretty clean. Not so much. Then over here, hybrid. Hybrids, not as clean as you would think. Plug-in hybrids now have the yellow stripe, which means you've got the battery manufacturer and you've got the electricity production weighing in on that number. And that's 163. Still not great, but look over here. This is where it pays off. So it's all about the fact that, yes, the power comes from the grid. Yes, the battery had to be manufactured, but those are accountable costs that are much less than what's happened over here. Because at this point now, you're really down to some very, very small kilograms of CO2 emission. Essentially, it's all the emission that was made in the construction of the vehicle, because going forward, it would be the emissions that come from the actual grid. So there really isn't that much going on. So once you do buy that EV, it is going to, that's it. You kind of accounted for a lot of the emissions over and above what you typically would get in some of the ICE vehicles. Okay. All right. Next up is a little bit of sustainability. So we hear a lot about, okay, well, it's not really clean because then what happens to the used battery? Well, Porsche, in their wisdom, infinite wisdom, built this battery so the modules can be swapped out, and this battery could last indefinitely. That was the design, okay? So, Peter Reck, product manager after sales, said it's the same as installing a rebuilt starter motor or an alternator today. So essentially, you can swap out these modules and put in new modules. So these modules up here, these little gray boxes, they're literally just battery modules. You take some out, you put some in. You take some out, you put some in. It's so easy, and it literally can be done, as I said, within 24 hours. I know this because I actually worked with Porsche Naples, and we created a video around exactly how to do this. This is on the PCA.org site. It's on YouTube. So if anyone's interested in actually seeing a battery swap video, have at it. It's out there, and you can just see it's really, it's incredibly simple. Of course, you need all the safety gear. You need to make sure you de-voltage the battery. You don't go in there and touch 800 volts. So obviously you're going to do the right thing in order to prepare it. But once you have it all prepared, essentially you just grab this thing, pull it out, and put another one in. It's just that easy. So it's a fascinating video if you get time to watch it. Okay, the other thing is what happens to used car batteries? Well, you might not believe this, but the entire battery is recyclable. It goes up a big conveyor belt. It gets ground up. The gold, the platinum, palladium all gets recycled out. It's then turned into a mush, as they call it, and then all of that then they separate it a little more, and next thing you know, you have an infinitely recycled bunch of materials. So that battery is almost 100% recyclable because it's all made of metals that can basically be recycled, including lithium and everything that's in it. So when someone says, hey, what happens to the battery? You've got another answer. Okay, so just interesting thought there. All right, track time. Can you use your EV on the track? There are a lot of rules based on the track, and the answer is you have to check with the track to see what their rules are. Some tracks are basically saying, yeah, no, we're not going to allow it. Other tracks are saying, yep, no problem, as long as you sort of disable some of the nannies and that you've done the proper safety checks, right? And so the proper safety checks are pretty straightforward. It's the stuff that you normally would check on. So insurance, track day insurance is absolutely recommended. Safety equipment, helmets are essential, of course. Transportation, how are you going to get there? And then preparation, of course. But then the key here is go back to that some of those other slides, and you need to make sure that you have mapped out the nearest high power charger. So you don't really want to be, in a situation where you're running down power and then you can't get home, and you're trying to use a slow charger and so forth and so on. And so, interestingly, some tracks are bringing high power chargers to the track. That is definitely happening, and on the kind of on the horizon. So check with your track to see if they have a high power charger. Just like they bring high power gas, a lot of people, they bring their own gas, 100 octane gas, etc. They're now bringing chargers. So this will get better over time. Right now, it is a big unknown based on the track, but there are still many tracks that do allow it with proper preparation. So that's kind of the best answer. And then lastly, I would upgrade your brake fluid to DOT4, and also, depending on, your car, the pads, but certainly the brake fluid, because on a track, you with all the weight that you're pushing around, you can put a whole lot of heat on those rotors, and that brake fluid, the boiling point of the brake fluid, if it's just sort of standard, could be reached. So if you're going to hit the track, I would definitely upgrade your brake fluid. Okay, so that's kind of in my opinion, that's pretty much a must do. Okay, really, one more thing. We've bounced through this very quickly here, but the one more thing that I wanted to show you was that Porsche is again working on improving their warranty. So you remember when we talked about how, over the years they've replaced the modules and so forth and so on. What they've now come out with in this TSB, this Technical Service Bulletin, is that any car from 2020 to 2024 that has a major battery issue, they now get a brand new 2025 battery. Let that sink in. So if you have a problem with your car and your battery is got issues, and it's, clearly if you get in a wreck or something, that's not going to count. But if it is, a manufacturer problem, the battery's not charging, there's some bad cells, they deem that it's just not the car, then now they're actually going to replace your battery with a brand new battery. And so with that brand new battery, of course, comes even more range. So the range now goes up because the new batteries the 2025 Taycans have more range than the 24s. So it's really a win-win. So that is my presentation. So this is my email. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help with tours or drives, or if you want to do a one-on-one Q&A, I'm happy to come to your regions, do webinars with regions, so let me know if I can be helpful. That's it. Back over to you, Laura.
Thank you so much, David. That was a lot of really great information. I want to thank everyone for taking time to attend tonight's presentation. We appreciate you being here. Just a reminder, this webinar was recorded and we will have it uploaded on pca.org under Region Focus within the next few days. And also a reminder to please join us for our next webinar on September 16th. Thank you so much.